Hello and welcome back. I'm Raj Kletke. Today I'll show you which knots I've chosen for adding tippet, attaching a fly, and adding a dropper. I'll explain why I chose them and try to show you how I tie them. If you search for fly fishing knots, you'll find numerous articles. Some are very good and give many technical details. Some also have excellent animations of videos of how the knots are classically tied, and I would recommend reviewing some of these websites. But beware, how well you tie a knot and whether you completely tighten it are often more important than the knot's technical details. I've tried numerous knots over the years, and ultimately I've chosen the Pitzen knot and the Orvis Tippet knot for my terminal tackle knots. Why? Well, I'm usually fishing fairly small flies, so commonly I'm using 5 or 6x tippet. I want knots that, however, can cover a wider range of tippet sizes. My knots should also work with fluorocarbon for those rare times that I use that rather than my usual nylon monofilament. I prefer non-clinch knots so I can tie any tippet to any fly hook without worrying about the wire diameter. And I want a knot that provides a straight attachment. Of course, I want a strong knot, but most importantly, I want a knot with the right strength. If I get hung up and need to break off, I prefer to break off at the fly rather than losing the whole tippet also. These knots usually work that way for me, although some knot strength charts would suggest otherwise. Incidentally, this short tippet is for illustration. I don't fish with this short a tippet usually. But most importantly, the knot must be easy to tie, even if I have cold hands. Let's start with the Pitzen knot. I use this knot for attaching my flies to the tippet and attaching a dropper to the bend of the point fly. I tie the knot in a slightly different fashion than commonly illustrated because I feel I have more control this way, but it is the same knot. I'm using fly line backing here so you can easily see it. First, I use my hand for a reference to get approximately a 5-inch long tag end. As you gain confidence in tying this knot, that length may vary. I control the fly with the right ring finger, as shown here, and pinch both lines together with my left thumb and index finger. I make a loop around my left index finger, going from front to back, and pinch the tag end again. I then take 3 turns from front to back, going over the top, pinching the line between each turn, so I never lose control of the tag end. I get control over the tag end, release or actually pull off the loop from my index finger, and push the tag end through the loop from the front. Next, I pinch the tag end against my left index finger while I start to snug up the knot. With monofilament, I would moisten the knot at this point before pulling entirely tight. One big advantage of the Pitzen knot is that you can tell if it's tight. When the tag end is perpendicular to the running line, like it is here, it's still not tight. Keep pulling on the running line until the tag end becomes parallel to it. Sometimes a short tug on the tag end will help you tighten the knot. Here I'm using much heavier monofilament than usual so you can see it. Again, I use my hand to measure to be sure the tag end is long enough to work with. The key to tying any knot with monofilament is to keep control over the monofilament by pinching it with the other hand any time that you must let go of the tag end. Again, after making the loop over my left index finger, I make 3 turns. Some may use more turns based on tippet size, but 3 is adequate, and more turns makes it harder to properly tighten. After releasing the loop from my index finger and putting the tag end through it, as before, and holding my thumb against my left index finger, trapping the tag end, I snug it up a little, add saliva as moisture, and then I pull tight. Monofilament will often snap into place as you tighten it, so it's easy to see that the knot is now tight. When using the Pitzen to attach a dropper to a point fly, I simply leave out the fly, holding the loop open with my right ring finger. When finished with the knot, I slip the form loop on the hook bend and after wetting the knot, snug it in the usual fashion. If you're having trouble getting the knot to snug up, like with this thick monofilament here, a tug on the tag end will often allow you to snug it the rest of the way. Always be sure to snug your knots carefully or they will likely break. Some say the Pitzen and the 1620 knot are the same. Others say they're slightly different. There are two variations, but I've seen both variations listed under both names. In the variation I use, where I put the tag end in from the front, the tag end will be crossing the loop on the opposite side of the running line. In the other variation, the tag end would enter its loop from the back, the way I tie the knot. In this variation, the tag end goes into the loop so that the tag end and running line are running together over the loop. I prefer the first variation, so again, I put my tag end into its loop from the front. I do think it's slightly stronger this way, but I'm not entirely sure. On to the Orvis knot. It's a straight knot, very strong, useful for monofilament or fluorocarbon in a wide variety of tippet sizes, and it's easy to tie. For the first tie, I'll be using thick material so you can see how easily it is to tie this knot. I hold the leader in my left hand and the tippet in my right hand. I overlie the leader and tippet line about 6 inches, being sure I have excess tippet behind my left hand pinch. I then slide my right hand pinch of both lines until I have about 1 to 2 inches of leader outside of my right hand pinch. I'll use my middle finger from my right hand to make a fairly large loop, putting that in front of the running line, bringing the tippet and tag end of the leader from the back up around the front, always pinching it to hold it in place, and then pulling it from the back of the loop through. I then basically repeat the same thing, bringing the tag end of the leader and the tippet up and back, down in front, pinching it in place to keep control, pulling it through from the back, and then snugging up. At this point, if it was monofilament, I would add saliva before tightening it the rest of the way. It's actually easier to do with monofilament. I have the leader in my left hand and my tippet in the right hand. I'll make sure that I have about 6 inches of leader, overlie the tippet material, pinching with my left hand, making sure that I have about 1.5 to 2 inches of tippet material to the left of my left hand pinch. Bring the right hand into near the end, leaving 1 inch of leader tippet end, and again form the loop as before. Bring it up from the back, down in front, pinch to hold in place, grab a hold of the monofilament of the tippet end tag and the tippet and pull it through. Repeat the same thing. With thicker monofilament, you may have to reapproximate your pinch with the left hand, but with thinner monofilament, often you can do it in one fell swoop. Here, I reapproximated my pinch, and again, grabbing the end of the tip of the leader and the tippet, I pull it from the back of the loop through. I snug it up and then moisten it, and then pull tight the rest of the way. My final pull is always on the tippet material and the leader material, leaving the tag ends free. Just like with the Pitzen knot, you want to get control over this tag end, so you either pinch the fly, or in this case the knot, in your left hand, bend the, in this case, tag end of the leader over, keeping it in the pinch also, and then clip off as close to the knot as possible. This allows you to keep good control over the tag end so it can be disposed of in the proper fashion. When using the Orvis Tippet knot to connect leader to tippet, I try to stay within one size difference. In other words, a 4x to a 5x or a 5x to a 6x, but will occasionally accept two size differences if it still gives a good transition, as you can see in this particular case. However, if there's a greater size difference, it often results in hinging due to the differences in the flexibility of the material. If this happens, I'll step down a size at a time to avoid this. If you're using different manufacturers' leader and tippet material, they may have different flexibility characteristics and the issue may be exaggerated, so check for hinging. The Christopher knot and the Seaguar knot are very similar and somewhat related to the Orvis Tippet knot. All form basically a figure 8 knot with extra wraps in one of the loops. The Orvis knot has the extra wraps on the tippet side of the figure 8, while the Christopher and Seaguar knots have the extra wrap or wraps on the leader side of the figure 8. I always use a total of 2 wraps to approximate to the appropriate loop for any of these knots, independent of the tippet size, as extra wraps do not seem to add extra strength in the tippet sizes I'm using and do make tightening the knot more difficult. I prefer the Orvis Tippet knot as I feel I have better control and may have less leader and tippet wastage, and subjectively I feel it may be slightly stronger, but the Christopher knot is also easy to tie. Again, you just overlie the tippet and leader material, forming a large loop. Rotate that loop around 2 times, and then reach through the loop, grabbing the tag end of the leader and the tippet material. Pull all of the material through, snug it up, pulling on all 4 lines, moisten, and then tighten the rest of the way before cutting off the tag ends. Again, be sure to maintain control so you can dispose of the tag ends. Is there a downside to these knots? Yes. The main downside is that they commonly leave longer tag ends, supposedly wasting more leader and tippet material, but this does allow better control of the tag ends when trimming, so you can easily dispose of these tag ends properly, which is important, as even regular nylon monofilament takes hundreds of years to totally decompose, while fluorocarbon is said to take thousands of years to decompose. So maybe that extra long tippet is not a downside after all. Okay, those are my choices for terminal tackle knots. What knots do you use and why? Join me next time when I show you my 2 choices for what I think are underused fly styles for trout fishing. I'll also show you how I fish them. I'm Raj Kletke, and I'll see you soon.